To some, elves are tiny creatures that can easily be killed. But to many, elves are the Chads of Magic the Gathering, cards waiting to be pumped by Craterhoof to swing in for lethal. In this video, we are going to be playing with Magic's best elves of all time. And the deck is pretty insane. With this list, we'll be making a ton of mana and drawing a lot of cards. The two key cards in this list that will help us throughout this video is Gaia's Cradle and Glimpse of Nature. Our general game plan is to get 2 or 3 creatures on the table as soon as possible and ramp to cast Natural Order to get the Hoof and Bash. If we don't draw that side of the deck, we can use Glimpse of Nature and all the mana generating elves to cast as many creatures as we can, drawing a ton of cards in the process to translate into the Natural Order plan. If you are worried about Force of Will, we have Allosaurus Shepherd to make all of our green creatures uncountable with a great activated ability if we don't find the Hoof and have a lot of mana. As always, if you like this type of content, then click that subscribe button so you don't miss any future uploads. To start game 1, we're on the draw and we have a great opening hand. Generally speaking, lands and spells is a great keep as we do have a low land count deck, and any hand with Gaia's Cradle and creatures to cast is generally very good. The opponent starts off their turn with Once Upon a Time. I thought that it was the mirror until they revealed Caves of Chaos Adventurer, so it's now going to be Red-White Initiative, a new deck in the Legacy format if you didn't know about it. We top deck a Once Upon a Time of our own, shoot that off, and we find a Wirewood Symbiont. This is a very powerful card in the Elves deck. While it isn't an elf, it lets you bounce an elf to your hand to untap target creature. As bouncing a creature is an additional cost to this activated ability, it is even better than an instant speed bounce to protect your elves from removal spells and also ramp you. We're going to be using Wirewood Symbiont throughout this video, so it's important to understand how it works. Anyways, you might be confused why I played my fetch land in past. That's because we're looking to fetch Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor is great with Gaia's Cradle, as adding an additional creature, and a land is a great card. The opponent spent their turn ramping into a Seasoned Dungeoneer, which gives them the initiative and searches up a basic Plains. On their end step, we stick with the plan of getting a Dryad Arbor, looking to ramp ourselves for this turn. While the opponent has a very powerful creature on the other side of the board, I think it's time to take our turn off to cast a load of creatures and pass to set up this Natural Order. While the opponent's taking their turn, I just want to give a warning that this is my first time ever playing Elves, and this is a combo deck, and I'm sure you can understand that playing a combo deck for the first time, you're going to miss lines. So if I'm making any mistakes, just let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm not expecting to have played this deck perfectly. In the opponent's second main phase, they try to Solitude my Allosaurus Shepherd. Well, because we have the Wirewood Symbiont, at instant speed we can bounce the Allosaurus Shepherd to untap our Dryad Arbor. Now, on our turn, it's a clean kill. All we need to do is use Windswept Heath to get a Dryad Arbor. That's 4 creatures on the board. We can then use Natural Order to sacrifice our summoning sick creature to attack in with everything. The opponent concedes and we move on to game 2. As I'm scared of cards like Fury and 1-for-1 removal, I take out the Heritage Druids as you need a lot of elves on the table, and we board in some removal spells, the Progenitus and the Collector Roof, and trim on other things. On the draw game 2, we have a clear mulligan as Gaia's Cradle does not tap for any mana unless you have creatures on the board, so there's nothing to be thought about with this hand. And that logic still applies to double Gaia's Cradle, so gotta go to 5, and we find a very nice 5. I decide to bottom the duplicate Allosaurus Shepherd as well as the Snuff Out just because we're on the draw and I don't really want to have a removal spell. I'd rather try to luck sack the opponent and win with Natural Order quickly. The opponent starts off with the Karakas and just says go, which is Screaming Swords to Plowshares, so I'm just going to play my fetch land and pass back to either fetch Dryad Arbor on their end step, or if they continue to hold up the removal spell, I'll just use it to fetch a forest. The opponent plays an Anointed Peacekeeper and names Allosaurus Shepherd, meaning that it costs 2 more mana to cast now. So I'm going to get a Dryad Arbor on the end step and cast 2 spells on my turn. I use Green Sun Zenith to get Curian Ranger, which lets me bounce a force to my hand to untap a creature, so we get to untap the Dryad Arbor and play the Heritage Druid. The opponent doesn't do much on their turn apart from plow one of my creatures, attack in for 3 and say go. This makes me think that they have another removal spell in hand, so we have to be wary of it if we can. Drawing a Boseiju here is really rough. While we can play the Allosaurus Shepherd with some bouncing shenanigans, I decide not to cast it because I'd rather put another Dryad Arbor into play. Maybe this is a loose idea, but I just want to keep hitting my land drop so we can eventually cast this Natural Order, as don't forget the Allosaurus Shepherd costs 3 because of the Anointed Peacekeeper. The opponent attacks in their turn and just passes back, so I decide to fetch. In response, the opponent casts a Solitude. They exile my Curian Ranger, there isn't much I can do, so I get a Dryad Arbor and I untap. We find a Glimpse of Nature, but we can't Glimpse plus Allosaurus Shepherd because still the Shepherd costs 3 mana. So the best play is just cast the Shepherd and set up for a Natural Order next turn by just playing the Boseiju from our hand. The problem is here, for the rest of the game, the opponent just loaded up on removal spells with multiple Solitudes, exiling all of my creatures and just limiting my mana. I probably could have played this game differently to win, I'm not too sure though. Going into game 3, we have the perfect opening hand. 4 lands is a little rough, but lands and spells is generally a great keep, and we can go 1, 2, 3, so let's just do that game plan, fetching a basic forest, playing the Sentinel, and saying go. The opponent is also on a very slow draw by just playing a plateau and passing back, clearly implying Swords to Plowshares, so let's move to combat and see what they do. To no one's surprise, they have the removal, so now let's play a post-combat Collector Roof to stop any degenerate artifact ramp that they could have. On their turn, they just have a land and a Chalice on 1, but Grist doesn't care about a Chalice, so let's get this on the table and start making some 1/1s. What's even better about Grist is its -2 ability being able to destroy any creatures that they play, and the initiative deck that needs to have creatures on the board will struggle against this activated ability. The opponent plays an Archon, we top deck a Snuff Out, so let's bash in with our creatures, and then the opponent concedes. Not too much here, just had the nuts. Going into the next round, on the draw, we have a great opening 7. Generally speaking, any hand with Gaia's Cradle is very powerful, and this hand is even extra powerful because we have Glimpse of Nature with it too. However, things don't look too good when the opponent starts off with a mana bond and moves to their end step, revealing to me their hand of the absolute insane nuts. They have all lands and a Life from the Loam, meaning that they get to put 4 lands into play, Life from the Loam into the graveyard, and can now dredge that next turn to put more lands into play. Ignoring what the opponent's doing, let's Green Sun Zenith for 0. As Dryad Arbor is a creature, we can get it with Green Sun Zenith, and to even ramp us more by it being a land, as well as a creature for Gaia's Cradle. We pass back and the opponent copies my Bayou with their Thespian Stage, dredge Life from the Loam, and only get 1 Wooded Foothills, so this is actually good for us because we're getting more time. We find another Gaia's Cradle off the top of the deck, so let's continue to build our board. This turn is going to be a lot of value because we start off with a Glimpse of Nature. Now we can cast a Wyrwood Symbiote, that draws us a card, then we can play our Gaia's Cradle. As we have 2 creatures, we can cast the Elvish Visionary to draw 2 cards again. After this though, there's not much else we can do, so we gotta pass back and hope they whiff on this Life from the Loam. Well, they don't whiff, they find a Dark Depths. For those who don't know the combo, if you Thespian Stage target Dark Depths, it essentially sacrifices both lands and produces a 20/20. This means that this turn we either have to find a Boseiju to be able to interact with their lands combo, or we have to combo kill the opponent. After doing some maths, I decide that the best thing to do is to float our mana and use Wyrwood Symbiote to untap the Dryad Arbor and bounce the Elvish Visionary so that we can have access to as many cards as possible and also as much mana as possible. I start off with a Glimpse of Nature, and then a second Glimpse of Nature because we have so much mana, and now we can start drawing a lot of cards. All we have to do here is find creatures that generate mana. Now to start off, things were going perfectly, we were finding creatures, generating a lot of mana, and we even found a Heritage Druid. However, we got to the point where we started drawing a ton of lands and non-creature spells. So now we've got the Wyrwood Symbiote to cast our Elvish Visionary, and we need to draw some creatures from this card. You have to be kidding me. I drew 3 non-creatures. Now what's good is we do have Once Upon a Time, which will help us dig for more creatures, and we have Green Sun Zenith, which can find another Wyrwood Symbiote. So actually secretly, we do have a kill still here. So let's just Once Upon a Time and start getting more value. The opponent then makes a Thespian Stage 20/20 in response. As I wanted to show you guys how this combo works, I decided not to Boseiju because I knew that we would kill them here. I promise you, I totally didn't forget that we had Boseiju in hand. I really just wanted to show you this combo. I promise I'm not a punter. Yeah, that's probably not a believable excuse. Anyways, let's start to speed things up a bit. Here we start to generate a lot of mana and attempt to draw our whole deck. Then we can Natural Order, get the first Crater Hoof Behemoth, and then we drew the second one, so cast the second one, Boseiju the Maze of Ith so they can't untap any of our attacking creatures, and bash in for lethal. This was a really fun game, but also very, very complicated because this is my first time playing Elves, and I don't know the deck as good as some people probably watching this video. Anyways, we cast our Hoof, attack in, and the opponent concedes. Going into boarding, Endurance seems really good against Life from the Loam, and we bring in Progenitus and some Endurances. Our opening hand for game 2 seems to be bad because we have the Progenitus, but if this was a 6, it would be a Snap Keep. I don't see why you don't Snap Keep it here. Got a load of mana and a Green Sun Zenith and a load of draw steps because we're on the draw, so let's keep and see what the opponent has. They just start off with a Windswept Teeth, get a land, cast an Exploration, and play a Field of the Dead. Not too intimidating, and quite a slow start for what we're concerned about. Anyways, we just start off with a Forest and a Nettle Sentinel because the opponent will be playing Wasteland. To no one's surprise, the lands deck is pretty good at getting lands into play, so they got to 5 lands on their second turn. We start off by attacking with Nettle Sentinel, and then we can have a really nice turn here with Heritage Druid because we can keep untapping the Nettle Sentinels to net us a lot of mana. So I decide to Green Sun Zenith to get Elvish Visionary and to start drawing a load of cards and still net us a lot of mana. It's unfortunate that we end our turn with no gas in hand, but because of Wildwood Symbiote we can bounce this Elvish Visionary every turn at instant speed, so as long as the opponent doesn't put us in a life or death situation, we should be fine. The opponent just does some land shenanigans to make a load of 2/2s with the Field of the Dead, which is completely fine, and they just pass with nothing up. We bounce with the Wildwood Symbiote on the end step and untap. Now it's time to make a ton of mana and draw a ton of cards. We find a Glimpse of Nature off the top of the deck, which is perfect here as it lets us cantrip a ton, which finds us a natural order. That wasn't too difficult. Now we can again get Craterhoof Behemoth, attack in, and win the game. Not too shabby. In the next round, we actually managed to crush Initiative again in 3 very interesting games. However, because of Allosaur Shepherd working around Chalice of the Void and being able to hardcast Craterhoof Behemoth because of Gaia's Cradle made us have a very interesting end. However, Delver in rounds 4 and round 5 just crushed us. The Lightning Bolts, the Counter Spells, the Dress Downs all really beat up on us, and as well as their 3/3 flying creatures constantly pressuring us with the Murktides made them very hard to beat. A 3-2 record with a deck that I'd never played before, I'll take that. What did you think of this deck? I thought it was a lot of fun, so as always don't forget to like and subscribe and check out this video because YouTube will think you like it.